Hello, magical people of the internet. I am Jen, and welcome to my vlog I never thought I would, where we discuss doing things that we never thought we would do and the fabulous places that they can lead us. I have a very special guest today. He's an author and a teacher, Sebastien Chauzu. Hi, Sebastien. How are you today?
I'm well, thank you.
I'm so excited to hear about your story. I know you've done several things that you never thought you would do in your life. And can you pick one of them to talk about today and let us know where it led you?
So what I picked today is I never thought I would move to Canada. Um, you're going to tell me it's not a big move, but I think maybe the biggest move was to come from a big city in France to a small town in Canada, and that was maybe the biggest difference. When I first arrived here, I remember I was talking with my students, and they were like right away they told me, so you're where are you coming from? And so in Canada, when you say, oh, I'm French, people will say, no, you're not. And I say, what do you mean? I'm French. And so they listen your accent carefully and they say, no, you're not. And I say, like, what do you mean? So here in Canada, you say you're either Acadian or you're from Quebec. That's the only French they know. And you say, oh, you mean you're coming from France, the country? And I say, like, yep, I'm French. And so they right away they say, so why did you come here? And I was like, because you're living in a beautiful country and like whatever. And say, but why? And I said, so short story. I say, my ex-wife brought me here. And they keep looking at me and I say, why? As if, it was the worst thing. They were living in a worst place. They're like, we are born here, so we're obliged to live here. But you had the choice. Why did you come over? And so I started to. It was really interesting because for teenagers, they always have the feeling to be tracked somewhere and they cannot leave. And it's the same thing in France. It doesn't make a difference, but it's really interesting to give them perspective and you say like, I've seen some other things and you're living in a great place. So that was a really good start. Um, Coming over here in Canada, I had a lot of cliche in mind. And obviously, I mean, can you name one cliche? Coming from France, you come in Canada. What can you imagine? What's the biggest cliche?
That it's cold and there's a lot of snow.
Exactly. So I first arrived and I thought like, no, there is not that many snow here, that much snow, like it's no big deal. The first time I was here, it was 10 years ago. We had 2.5 meters of snow. So it started to snow the 1st of October. And I remember I was facing the kids and they were like telling me, oh, it's snowing, it's snowing. And I was like, it was the 1st of October. And I thought they were joking. And I look at the window and it was really snowing. And it was amazing to see that the kids are like super excited when it snows. I was thinking like, oh, they see snow, every year they must be like, oh, it's snowing again. Like, no, they are, genuinely
Mhm.
excited. And so we had snow the 1st of October and the last snow was in May, 2.5 meters. I remember my driveway looks like there was two big walls on each side. I almost put a garage door at the entrance of my driveway. It was just crazy. In France, when we have 5 centimeters of snow, the army is mobilized. Like people stay home, like it is stay safe, stay home. Like 5 centimeters of snow. I'm going to tell you a true story. In sort of a big country, a big city in France. One year they had 15 centimeters of snow and everything was like blocked. Nobody walked for a week and people started to complain and say like, it's ridiculous. In some other countries, they have snow. What do they do? And people say, yeah, they have snow plows, and they clear the snow. But here we don't have anything like that. We can't do anything. And so the mayor of the city decided to buy snowplows. And but obviously, time to order them. The snowplows arrive at the end of when the snow was gone. And they say, what are we going to do with the snowplows? So they put the snowplows in a big depot. And 5 years later, they had 15 centimeters of snow again. Guess what happened? They forgot about it. So they had exact same thing. And at the end of the week, they say, But we had the same issue 5 years ago. I remember, didn't we order some snowplows? They forgot the location of the depot. So that's a true story. I'm not kidding. It's a true story.
No,
So
I believe it. I totally
so,
believe it. It's crazy.
when you don't used to have something, you can pretend that, oh, you need to be ready for everything. But, when you deal with snow every year, it's fine. But when it's exceptional, it needs to be exceptional. And you close everything for a week and you keep going. But yeah, that's where I'm coming from. And yeah, snow it's still excited for me when I see snow.
Definitely, but it's true. Being equipped for winter is the key, whether it's the snowplow or even having the right boots, having the right jacket, having the right things to wear. I was watching a documentary once about, I think it was Sweden or Finland has certain schools that are outdoors all year round. And one of the teachers said, there's no such thing as bad weather, it's just bad clothing.
Exactly. Yeah, you're right.
And it
And
always stuck with me.
my dad is a big runner, and he's saying, like, if you're a runner, you go to run, every day. It doesn't really matter. If you start looking at the weather outside, you will always find an excuse not to go to run. So I think it's a good lesson. And you're right. When you're well equipped, it's fine.
That's great
um,
advice your father gave you. And I think it's not just about running, it's about anything.
yeah.
I think it's so much easier to find excuses not to do something as opposed to an excuse of why you should do something, which is one of the reasons I love talking to people about doing things that they never thought they would. Because in life, it's so much easier to talk ourselves out of an idea than talk ourselves into an idea.
You're right. I didn't think about that. Yeah, you're right. It's the whole purpose of your broadcast. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
It's
So you came to Canada. How long have you been here now?
So it's been 10 years, but I keep learning. I keep learning. Last week, I have a dog, and I asked for a groomer because I wasn't really happy with the groomer I had. And one of my friends say, "Oh, so I have a really good groomer, and it's just before Sussex." So Sussex is like 50 minutes away from my town,
What town
and
are you? You didn't tell us yet. Where do you live?
Hampton, New Brunswick. And so it's like 20 minutes away, Sussex. So I say, okay, so it's before Sussex. So French guy. So it means that it's going to be 15 minutes, worst come to the worst. So just before I checked on the map, impossible to find the place, impossible. Google Map, like, no idea. So I called my friend and he explained to me where it was. Ended up, it took me 45 to 50 minutes. I had to knock on 2 doors in order to find the place. So where he's saying it's before Sussex. In his mind, it means that he's drawing a line, on Sussex, on the latitude Sussex, and it means it's before this line. I say, like, what? But I think it's the way in France. If we have to drive for 2 hours, we pretty much book an hotel on the way, because it's a big trip. We have a small country, but here, like, it's no big deal. It's just like, oh, it's around there, and you don't know what's going to happen. But I should know by now, but no, I'm still learning. Like, I trust people, and no, it's not happening. Like 45 minutes on the way and impossible to find.
But you
The
said it correctly, because if you're in France and you travel for 2 hours, you can easily be in another country. In Canada, you can travel for 2 hours. Sometimes it takes you that long just to get to work in
yeah,
the snow.
Exactly, and it's no big deal for people. They are used to people. They travel from here, especially in New Brunswick. It's quite common. People go to buy a car in BC, so they fly to BC and they come back with the car. They don't know how many days it's going to take, but it's no big deal. In France, you tell people this, they think that you're mad. Like, there is something wrong with you. It's impossible. 2 hours in a car, it's like, it's a big trauma. the first time I was here for 2 months, I think, and I was invited in a cottage. And same thing, people would say, oh, it's half an hour away. I said, great, okay, half an hour drive. Took us 50 minutes to come to the end of the driveway. So when I call that a driveway, it means that it was sort of a dirt road. So
Mhm.
by the way, you will have to explain to me the expression dirt road, because I never understood the word road in the expression dirt road, because that's not a road. I mean, me, I just call that it's a place in a forest with a little bit less trees, but that's not a road. It's never been a road. Anyway, so we arrive at the end of this driveway, and there was people waiting for us with a jeep, and I was like, I don't wait for my guest at the end of my driveway. My driveway is like 20 meters long. I started to be suspicious. It was like 25 minutes of a dirt road to go to the cottage. We had to pass two rivers, big rocks, name it. It was just a nightmare. And I was like, what? So the half an hour turned into a one and a half hour, and including like the half hour dirt road to go to this cottage. And but nobody complained. I remember my ex-wife, when we arrived, I said, like, it's crazy, can you imagine? And she said, what do you mean? She didn't even like realize that it took us like 3 times. It's just a set of mind. It's just the way it is. You start the journey and you don't look at your watch.
Yeah, exactly. Well, once you got settled, did you enjoy yourself? Was it a nice cottage?
It was amazing. It was an amazing experience. So the guys, I was here for 2 months. So all the guys were plaid shirts, and they were playing with a chainsaw. So I thought like, oh, they are doing that for me because, I'm the French guy and they want to make like the cliche of Canadian with plaid shirt playing with a chainsaw. And I thought it was a joke at first. It wasn't a joke. It was Canadian with plaid shirt playing with a chainsaw, and they were like cutting trees after trees. And we went on a river, and I was like, "Oh, great!" So we went on a boat. It was a boat like, I think I would use this boat for 3 people maybe. So we fit like 5 guys plus, I don't know, seven dogs on the boat. It was an old pontoon boat. It was just a nightmare. So we went on the boat, and it was a really nice experience. So it was really nice, but it was like unconventional for me. So I learned to pee from a boat in motion. I I learned to push a
So now
dog.
you're Canadian.
That's Canadian. And I learned also, do you know that? It's like, I would call that, I don't know, a beer relay. So it means that you have your beer, but you always they had a lot of rifle. And so you always like handle a rifle, or you go to pee, or you have to hold the dog. So you always have a beer in your hand. And so you pass the beer to someone else because you're doing something else with your hands. And so at the end, some guys end up with like 4 beers, and it keeps like moving. So the beers are always in motion. It's an amazing game. I love that.
But not one we can play during a pandemic.
No, that's not a game we can play now. Yeah, definitely.
I know it's funny how just simple things like that, like sipping somebody else's drink, has become so taboo because of the pandemic. But you're at a cottage, you're in a boat, bunch of people, you end up with somebody else's beer, you drink it anyways. Now, I can't even I
I
can't
know.
even imagine.
It's been a year. Did you notice when you watch a TV show, a movie, sometimes I'm like, what is it doing? Like, and because they don't have a mask or they do something, we're starting to be like conditioned. Like we expect things even when we watch TV show or movies, and we are shocked by their behavior. Like, oh yeah, that was like that before. Normal life.
Exactly. Yes, I've had some dreams where I've woken up in a panic because I went to a restaurant, and we ordered some dishes and everybody was sharing the food and everybody was putting their forks in the main dish. And I was just like, oh my God. And I'd like wake up like freaked out. when this behavior was completely normal a year ago, you wouldn't, some people would be like, okay, can you use the serving spoon? But
Yeah,
you wouldn't like get up and leave the restaurant if your friend put their own serving, their own fork in the main dish, or like even just having chips and dip at somebody's house. The thought of that is like totally, I don't know how long it'll take until I do that again.
you're right. It's a good question. I hope we will recover from that, but I don't know if we will. In terms of like habits, yeah, I don't know if we will be able to go back to a normal situation where we are not scared anymore.
Exactly. Like such normal habits seem so risky now. And it's true, we've been conditioned to, be afraid of people on the street, of just getting too close to somebody, being in an elevator with somebody, like we're all of a sudden paranoid.
I
It's
know.
it's quite unfortunate. But anyway, I wanted to move on to talk about your fabulous book. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that? So this is your first book. What prompted you, what inspired you to write a book?
So what I was talking about before, all these cliches about the snow, the forest in Canada, I think that was a biggest part of the reason why. It wasn't the first time I was writing, but I think it's the first time I started to write something that was really personal. It's strange, but it started to be really personal because I changed perspective, and all these cliches about Canada, they are in a book, and these cliches helped me to change perspective and in a way to be closer to me. I'm not really talking about me in the book, but I am inside every single characters, obviously. And I think it's yeah, coming to Canada uh, did help me. People who experience, when you travel somewhere, it's one thing, but when you start to settle somewhere, it's a complete different experience. I remember looking at the street signs. They are pretty much the same as in France, but there is some subtle difference. And I remember just that it's exotic, and it does like push you to think differently. And so you can imagine, with people and with experience, it's multiplied by trillions. And all these things, yeah, really made me realize what I really wanted to write.
So you have a book called Modifié, and it's currently available in French, but there will be an English version coming soon. Why
Yeah.
don't you tell us a little bit about this book?
So Modifié, it's the name of the main character. It's his nickname. So it means in English, it means modified. And when we have kids in autism spectrum, it's his case at school. They, most of the time in New Brunswick, which is, we follow an inclusive system, they follow a modified program. And we are used to take a shortcut, and instead of saying like he's following a modified program, we're saying is modified, which is unfortunate, but modified. He loves his nickname, and he doesn't want anyone to call him differently, because you say I'm modified, you say I'm different, and yeah, I own it. I am different, and it's what he wants to be considered different. He's bursting into the life of a girl. She's in her 40s. She never have kids before, and she's trying to push him away. I didn't want to put myself in to have the main character, the narrator, as a girl, but I found necessary to pick a girl as a narrator because I wanted to create this contrast. We are expecting the girls to be naturally, to have a natural connection with kids, And I wanted to create this tension between a boy who try to burst into the life of a woman, and this woman who rejects him. And that was my first tension. Books, it's always about tension and release, and it was one of the tension of the book. And after a while, she started to understand him, to know him, and to love him, obviously. And he helps her to see the life differently, with a different perspective.
This sounds fantastic. I can't wait to read it. I am actually going to buy the French version and see how I do with it. I'll be on Google Translate every like third line. Um, but I find it fascinating that you wanted to write a female character that kind of goes against the stereotype that all women are nurturing and motherly, especially towards a child, especially a child with special needs. So that sounds really fascinating. We were talking before we started about how we both teach, and we both worked with people with special needs, and how a lot of times we do end up learning more from them. So I love how you put that in the book as well. And I can't wait to see how the story unfolds. So this is going to be on my Christmas shopping list.
Yeah, I hope so. I create everything to have a lot of humor in a book, and I love funny stories, and it's the reason why I have this character. So because he doesn't talk much in a book, but he does modify the vision of people around him, and he's always surprising people, and he does provoke a lot of like funny situation.
And when did this book come out? When did it launch?
So it first came out in March in France. So it was 2 days before all the bookstore in France closed. So I went for to launch my book in Paris, in the oldest library in Paris, because I was fortunate enough to be published with one of the two biggest publisher in France. It's the equivalent of I don't know what would be in Canada. It would be
Random House or Penguin?
yeah, it would be it's the equivalent of Random House. They have the same. It's here in Canada. It's a Hachette book. So I was fortunate to go with them. It was a really long process. And usually when I told my friends at first that I was going to be published with Grasset, they didn't really believe me. And so I did this launching, but 2 days after, all the bookstores were closed, and the launching in Canada was in July, at the beginning of July. So it's available everywhere in Indigo and this kind of bookstore in Canada.
Great. Well, I'm so excited for you and for this first book. You've been getting rave reviews. I can't wait to read it. Please tell us where we can find it. Is it best to find it on your website, or is it best to go to the booksellers directly?
Yeah, you can find my book everywhere, but obviously I like when people go to a store, and so Indigo, or whatever your bookstore is. Especially they would have to sell some French book. But yeah, I like when people go to store. I think it's really important. Even during COVID, I think it's really important to go. And there is some system now when you can order and go pick it up. It's safe. So yeah, but you can find it everywhere.
Great. I agree with you. And prior to COVID, I've made a point of not buying things online, because I think it's really important to support local businesses, to support small businesses. Unfortunately, this pandemic has turned the whole world upside down, and we've become dependent on our virtual world. Just like you and I have had the opportunity to meet virtually, it wouldn't have happened otherwise. I'll include some links below of where you can find more information about Sebastien, where you can find more information about his book. I'd like to thank you so much for sharing your story today, and for telling us a little bit about the cliches of Canadian life. Thank you all for tuning in to I Never Thought I Would. I'd like to challenge you to do something that you never thought you would do, and let us know what it is in the comments and where it leads you. You never know, it might lead you to your wildest dreams. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Have a magical day.